Hello, guys. Yeah, good evening, all of you all. Hi there. So we have to continue our chapter, right? We are doing the, I guess, we had completed till the water potential. Am I right? And till the part of water potential we have completed. We have to continue with the further part. Have we saw the MCQs also water potential? We have through with the MCQs as well of that part. Yes. Yeah, ma'am. Just a second. Yeah, MCQs are done. Komal, fine. Chalo. So let's go to the further part. Okay. We'll carry it to the further part, guys. I'm doing the screen share. Let's go ahead. Yeah, guys. So see, I guess we have reached to this part. Correct. The water potential part is done. So we have to start from the osmosis. So we all know what is osmosis, right? We all have learned this. That is the substances, from one cell they are carried to the other cell, right? So osmosis has a barrier, like what we have to understand is that it is the movement of substances. See, osmosis first of all is only for water. Remember, osmosis is only for the water molecules, so it is only for water. All right. So cell wall, cell wall is a material which is freely permeable to everything, right? So hence it is not a barrier to the movement. That's correct. Now remember this word tonoplast. So this tonoplast is very important for objectives. The tonoplast is a cell, it's like a membrane of the vacuoles. Vacuole covering is called as what? It is known as the tonoplast. Right? So diffusion of the, what is osmosis? It's a term used for the diffusion. So it is a term which is like ideally used for the diffusion of water across a differentially or a selectively permeable membrane. Now, last lecture only I told you, I'll remember the freely permeable, semi-permeable, and selectively permeable. Freely permeable means what? Allows everyone to come in and go out. Semi-permeable means what? Allows only, the yes, certain solvents, but not the solutes. And selectively permeable is allows certain solutes and solvents to enter and leave the cell. So osmosis, occurs spontaneously in response to a force. So the net direction and rate of osmosis depends upon the very important factors. It depends upon the pressure gradient, right? The gradient, the effective, in the kidney chapter, you had that effective filtration pressure. Do you remember? EFP, effective filtration pressure. So it depends upon the pressure gradient as well as the concentration gradient. So water will move from region of what the higher concentration to its region of lower concentration until the equilibrium is achieved. So osmosis is movement of water molecules from the higher level to the lower level, right, across a selectively permeable membrane. So here the selectively permeable membrane is required, right? So at equilibrium, the both should have the same water potential. Okay, so that's pretty easy. So see, we have taken two chambers A and B, and they're separated by a semi-permeable membrane. So obviously, the solute water is going to go from what the higher level to the lower level. So it is going to go from, basically it will go from A to B, right? So water moves from, higher solvent to a lower solvent, or from a lower solute to a higher solute. From lower to higher for solutes and from higher to lower for solvents. So from a higher solvent to a lower solvent, it passes through. So, guys, all this is very simple, So we will take another experiment where we take an egg cell. So, what we do is that there's a solution of sucrose in water, right? We take a solution of sucrose in water in a funnel, right? Is separated from pure water by a selectively permeable membrane. So we are separating the both by a selectively permeable membrane. So you get this kind of membrane in only an egg. So what we do, we remove the yolk and the albumin through a small hole at one of the end and place the shell. We place the eggshell in a dilute solution of HCl for a few hours. The shell dissolves, leaving the membrane intact. So that is a selectively permeable membrane, right? So we keep it in this membrane. So what is going to happen? So this is that membrane. This is a sucrose solution. So sucrose is what with higher solutes, and this is like a pure water. So water is going to gush inside or outside. The water will go inside, right? Due to the endoosmosis. Until at what times? Until the equilibrium is attained. So the demonstration of osmosis, right? So initially what will happen? The water will diffuse inside, right? It will go inside the thistle funnel to raise the level of solution, and pressure can be applied as shown to stop the water movement. So if you apply the pressure, right, the water movement will stop. So external pressure when applied from the upper part of the funnel such that no water diffuses now. So this pressure required, so what is the definition of the pressure required to prevent water from diffusing is in fact the osmotic pressure. You understood what is the meaning of osmotic pressure? how much pressure we have to apply so that the diffusion should stop, so that the water molecules should not get diffused. That pressure is called as what? The OP, the osmotic pressure, right? And this is the yeah, and it is the function of the solute concentration. So more the solute concentration, greater will be the pressure required to prevent water. So more the solutes, more will be the osmotic pressure. So osmotic pressure will be directly proportional to the solute concentration, because if there's a solution with more solutes, then obviously more pressure will require for the because hence the osmosis will also be more. So greater osmotic pressure is required. So numerically, osmotic pressure is equal to the osmotic potential, but the sign is opposite. Why it is opposite? Because osmotic pressure is the positive pressure applied, whereas osmotic potential is the negative one. So osmotic pressure is what? Osmotic potential we learned that day. Remember psi p. Remember osmotic potential, but osmotic pressure is positive. I hope you revise the last lecture. It is very important that you revise what you learned earlier. Okay, so then let us continue further. The plasmolysis. So guys, let us understand what do we mean by the word plasmolysis. So see, what is plasmolysis? It is the behavior of the plant cells or tissues, right? What is plasmolysis? The behavior of the plant cells or tissues with regards to the water movement. It depends upon which solution we are keeping them. So there are three types of solutions, guys: isotonic, hypotonic, and hypertonic. So as simple as that. So isotonic में क्या होता है? The external solution is equal to the osmotic pressure of the cytoplasm. So both the concentrations are same, then it is called isotonic. If the external solution is more dilute than the cytoplasm, then it is called as what? Hypotonic. And if the external solute is more concentrated than the cytoplasm, it is called hypertonic. So I hope you've learned in the school, like, all these things, that what happens when we place a cell in the hypertonic and the isotonic solution. Like, so here, for example, if this is a cell, so it's like, we place that resin. Do you remember the experiment of resin, the dried resins we keep in water? So when we place the dried resins, in the water, so here the water is a medium and the resins are the cells, right? So what is going to happen in the solution A, B, and C? So what do you see in solution C, guys? The solution C is for what? Hypertonic. Is it hypertonic or isotonic? In hypertonic solution, what's going to happen? The water is more outside, right? The water content is more outside, right, than inside the cell. So water is more in the outer surface than in the inner part of the cell. So medium has got more water. The medium has got more water and the cell has got less water. So water goes from the higher level to the lower level. So water is going to go inside the cell. So in a hypertonic solution, what is going to happen? In the hypotonic solution, the cell is going to swell. The cell is going to swell in the hypotonic solution, correct? The water will gush inside and the cell will swell. So this is what happens in the hypotonic solution. So that is called turgid. What is the word? The cell becomes turgid. So what happens here is that the cell becomes turgid in diagram C. So diagram C is an example of which solution? Hypotonic solution, right? Where the water from outside, the medium Or like, in a beaker, if you have a water, the water from the beaker goes inside the dry resin. So it swells up. The exact opposite. So what happens in this solution? What happens in this solution? There is shrinkage, right? So what is the meaning of this word plasmolysis? See guys, cells swell in the hypotonic solution and shrink in the hypertonic ones. So plasmolysis, occurs when water moves out of the cell and the cell membrane of a plant cell shrinks away from its cell wall. So when the cell membrane for a plant cell shrinks and goes away from the cell wall, that is called plasmolysis. Right? It occurs when it is placed in a solution which is obviously hypertonic. Yeah. So you can see here in this particular diagram that the cell membrane is shrunk and it is going away from the cell wall. So plasmolysis occurs in which solution? A hypertonic solution by default. So first what happens, the water moves out. It's first lost from the cytoplasm and then from the vacuole. Right? So water is drawn out of the cell. So it shrinks. The cell is said to be plasmolyzed. Okay, and when the cell is placed in an isotonic solution, there is no movement of the water, right? So there is net movement is zero. Okay, so if the external solution balances the osmotic pressure of the cytoplasm, it is said to be isotonic. And when water flows into the cell and out of the cell, and they are in equilibrium, the cell is said to be flaccid. So here in an isotonic solution, we call that it is flaccid. So the inside and outside movement, when it is equal, when the inward and outward movement of water is equal, it is said to be in the flaccid state. Okay. So isn't this pretty easy, guys? This is the hypertonic solution. There was plasmolysis, right? In isotonic solution, the cell remains flaccid, right? And in the hypertonic solution, the cell swells. So the word is opposite, like hypo means less, but the cell will swell. And hyper is more, the cell will shrink. And iso is equal. You can try this with the black raisins. First, you keep it in pure water. Once we keep it in pure water, it will swell. And if that swollen raisin containing pure water, if you keep it in a salt ka solution, it will shrink. Okay? So obviously, what happens is that when water diffuses inside, right, it causes which pressure? It causes a Turgor pressure, right? So it causes development of the Turgor pressure due to the inward flow. So the pressure exerted by there's something called as a wall pressure, right? So the pressure exerted by the protoplast due to the entry of water against the wall, against the rigid walls, is called as the pressure potential, psi p. So Tagore pressure becomes like equal to the wall pressure, right? So Tagore pressure, remember, is ultimately responsible for enlargement and extension of growth of cells. Very important MCQ. Who is responsible? The Tagore pressure is responsible for enlargement and extension of the cells. Then I hope you know the imbibition, like, in the rainy season, the wooden doors, lakriya wo fuk jati thi. You must have seen that phenomena where the wooden things used to get swollen, the doors used to get jammed, right? The windows used to get jammed because of these swellings. So, so imbibition, like, it's a special type of, it's a kind of adsorption instead of absorption. It's a special type of diffusion when water is absorbed by, surface colloids. Water is absorbed by the colloids, like solids, causing them to increase in volume. And I told you the classical example of imbibition is the absorption of water by seeds and dry wood, right? So swelling, pressure applied by swelling of wood was used by prehistoric man, to split rocks and boulders, right? So because of imbibition, only the seedlings, they are able to emerge out of the soil into the open. That's because of the imbibition pressure. Imbibition is also diffusion since, right? Imbibition is also kind of diffusion since water is moving along the concentration gradient, right? The seeds and other materials have almost no water, hence they absorb the water easily because the seeds are dry, so the water goes from higher to lower level. So water potential gradient is developed between them. So in addition, for any substance to imbibe any liquid, affinity between the adsorbent and the liquid is also a prerequisite, right? So for any substance to imbibe any sort of a liquid, there has to be the affinity between the absorbent, that is the surface who is absorbing, and the particular liquid. So the chemical properties between them are very important. So some liquids are absorbed easily, some others are not absorbed easily. That's because of their compatibilities. That's correct. Okay, so that was the inhibition part. Okay, now we have to understand the long distance transport. Like, we have to do certain phenomenon like translocation and transpiration, pull, root pressure. So we have all this in the school level, like, experiments where we had placed a twig bearing white flowers in colored water. Remember that? You had placed a rose ka stem, white rose, and in the colored water, and you saw that, the petals became colored after some time, right? So this was for a demonstration that the path of water movement is through the vascular bundles like xylem, right? Xylem is a source of water in the upward distance. So long distance transport within a plant, cannot be only diffusion because diffusion is a very slow process, right? So for example, like, movement of a molecule across a plant cell takes around 2.5 seconds, right? So for a movement of, only by diffusion, that is the speed of diffusion, which is very, very slow. 2.5 seconds for diffusion of, for a molecule across one cell to the other cell. So imagine, like, it will take years for, one molecule to reach, distance of 1 meter. So we can wait for years and years, right, for the water to be transported. The plant will die. So there are some complex sites for production or absorption of water, right? There are some things called diffusion, active transport. So water and minerals, remember that for long distance, they are generally moved by mass or bulk flow. Bulk flow system means what? Like they are moved like together at a time. Large quantities are transported at a time. So mass flow is what? It is the movement of substances in bulk from one point to the other point as a result of pressure differences between the 2 points. So because there is a difference of pressure between these 2 points, these molecules go from one end to the other end. So it is a characteristic of mass flow that substances, whether in solution or in a suspension, they are swept, as in like they flow like a river from one place to another. Right? So bulk flow can be achieved through what? A positive hydrostatic pressure, right? That is, we need a pressure gradient like a garden hose, or negative hydrostatic pressure like suction through a straw. Garden hose is a positive hydrostatic pressure because it's like a garden pipe, no? And a negative pressure is like, which we are sucking in the opposite direction, like how you suck juices of cold drinks through a straw. That's a negative hydrostatic pressure gradient. Why negative? Is going against gravity, right? The opposite direction. Okay, so the bulk movement of substances, through the conducting or vascular tissues is called as what? It is known as the translocation, right? So that's the definition. The bulk movement of substances through the conducting tissues or through the vascular tissues like xylem, phloem, is known as the translocation. So plants have got two vascular tissues, as we all know, that is the xylem and the phloem, correct? So xylem is associated with what? It's associated with the translocation of mainly water and salts, right? And some little organic substances like nitrogen, sometimes hormones from the roots to the aerial parts. But phloem translocates a variety of organic as well as inorganic solutes. And phloem can go in both the directions, upward as well as downward. These guys, where you are? So now the next part, like how do plants absorb water? Okay, what is the mechanism for the water absorption? So here you see, we know that the roots absorb water, right? So we all know that roots absorb water that goes into the plants, obviously, right? Okay, there's some pressure in the roots. So there's a responsibility of absorption of water and minerals is more specifically function of root hair. There are millions of root hair formed by the, cells of epiblema. So root hairs are thin, slender extensions, you all know now, of the epidermal cells, and they increase the surface area. They are like villi, root hair can be compared to the villi of our intestines. So water is, absorbed along with mineral solute. So that's called as a sap, right? It's called as what? It's called as the sap. So there are two pathways like we did last time, apoplast and symplast. I hope you remember the apoplast, symplast. Who will tell me what is apoplast and symplast? Yeah, like it was similar to the antipode and unipode. Uni means one, anti is like opposite, and sim means together they go. So what is the apoplast? See, apoplast pathway is very important. So apoplast is a system of adjacent cells that is, continuous throughout the plant, except at the Caspian strips. So if you remember them, Caspian strips of the endodermis of the roots, right? So apoplastic movement of water occurs exclusively through the intercellular spaces and the walls of cells. Movement through the apoplast does not involve, right, crossing the cell membranes. So this movement is dependent on the gradient entirely, right? So apoplast does not provide any barrier to water movement, and water movement is through bulk flow, mass flow. So as the water evaporates into the intercellular spaces or atmosphere, tension develops in a continuous stream of water. So hence, mass flow of water occurs due to the adhesive and cohesive forces. So that's simply the apoplast pathway. So you can see the apoplast pathway. It's a very simple through the intercellular spaces, right? They do not cross the cell membrane for the apoplast, and for symplast taken clause. So apoplast is simple through the intercellular spaces they go, and ultimately they reach the xylem. So from the root hair they are absorbed, and from the epidermis to the cortex to the endodermis and then pericycle and into the xylem, then upwards. But symplast is more like more complex. The symplast system is a system of interconnected protoplast. So neighboring cells, all these neighboring cells are connected by plasmodesmatas. Remember, this was there in the cell chapter in the 11th standard. Plasmodesmatas connect the cytoplasm. They're like cytoplasmic bridges or strands. So during symplast movement, the water travels through the cells, their cytoplasm. Intercellular movement is through the plasmodesmata, right? So water has to enter the cells through the cell membrane, and hence movement of water is slow because it has to cross the cell membranes and all. And movement is again same way like through the potential gradient. Symplast movement may be aided by cytoplasmic streaming. Do you know, guys, what is cytoplasmic streaming? Cytoplasmic streaming. Anyone knows what is that? It was there in the 11th standard for y'all. Yes, correct. Cytoplasmic streaming is also known as cyclosis. It is a movement of cytoplasm, right, inside a cell. But there's a very important thing. This only occurs in which cells? This is only for the eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells do not show cyclosis. They do not show the cytoplasmic streaming. Very good, Arya. So because of the cytoplasmic streaming or cyclosis, it will help in the movement, from one cell to the other cell also. Correct. Very good. Yeah. So here what's going to happen is that So because of the cytoplasmic streaming, you know, it is going to definitely help. So simplest movement, you know, I told you that, like, you know, we have observed the cytoplasmic streaming in case of hydrilla leaf, right? So most of the water flows into the roots via the apoplast pathway, since the cortical cells are loosely packed and they offer no resistance to water movement. So they can easily go from the, you know, epidermis, endodermis, right? So, but we get stuck where the inner boundary of the cortex, that is the endodermis, is impervious to water because of the Caspian strips. So, how to cross the Caspian strips? Because Caspian strips are impervious to water, so water molecules are unable to penetrate this layer. So they are directed to the cell wall regions, which are not suberized. What is suberized? Suberin, which is like a waterproof material. So the water then moves. First, it then moves through the symplast and again across the membrane to reach the xylem vessels. So because of the Caspian strips and the endodermis, you know, the water molecules are unable to penetrate. So they are directed to the wall regions, right? And then into the cells, you know, proper through the membranes. So movement of water through the root layers is ultimately symplast only. So this is only way water and other solutes can enter the vascular cylinders. Once they go to the xylem, then water is, you know, free to move. So in the young roots, you know, water directly enters, you know, through the xylem vessels or the tracheids. So they are non-living cells, you know, they are part of the apoplast pathway, xylem vessels, tracheids. Then figure this is the exact way how it goes. Right? So you can make out that it is through the symplast. You can see the symplast pathway straight, and the apoplast is what? It cannot cross, no? So it goes through the walls and then through regions which are not suberized, right? So ultimately they have to, you know, go to the xylem. Okay, now some plants have additional structures along with them, like, you know, mycorrhiza. You all know mycorrhiza. What is a mycorrhiza? It's a symbiotic association of, you know, the roots, plants' roots. They are concerned with fungus. Both get benefit, you know, both are benefited due to each other, right? So they have hyphae. You remember that Hartignets. So they form the mycelium. You know, there are two types of mycorrhiza, no? Ecto and the endomycorrhiza. Ectomycorrhiza form like the they form a covering, you know. The ectomycorrhiza, right? So the hyphae have a large surface area. They absorb minerals and water from the soil. So the fungus provides minerals and water to the roots. In turn, the root provides the nitrogen, you know, and the sugars. It's like a give and take relationship. Fungus also secretes antibiotics that kills the root pathogens. It also helps in, you know, increasing surface area because they form the mantle, you know, and they increase the volume for absorption of inorganic nutrients and water, right? And in return, you know, they give the sugar, the nutrition. So some plants have an obligate association with mycorrhiza, like pine seeds. So pine has compulsory association with the mycorrhizae. It can be ecto or endo. Endomycorrhiza are very different. They form VAM. You remember vesicular mycorrhiza. Vesicular arbuscular mycorrhiza. It's called AM, arbuscular mycorrhiza or vesicular arbuscular mycorrhiza. Okay, then let's understand, how the water moves up. Like, there are two theories for this. One theory is called as what, root pressure. The other is called as the transpiration pull. Pretty much quite easy, right? So what is the meaning of root pressure? See, it's basically very simple. The soil has, various ions from the soil are actively transported, right? Because they are absorbed actively, and water increases the pressure. So the positive pressure which is there in the roots is called as a root pressure. It is responsible, how does this pressure come? Because of the absorption of water and the ions, you know. So root pressure exists for the, medium size like shrubs and herbs, smaller plants, right? So how to prove that? It's very simple. So choose a small stem plant where there is plenty of moisture. Cut the stem horizontally near the blade, right? So another example of root pressure is like, keep a small uh, plant like balsam. Like, in a pot we take a, so what we do is that we take a beaker and that we have some liquid like, like saffron, and then we keep a twig there. So it's so easy that, root pressure se kya hoga? The colorful water will come up, so it's a very simple proof. Like, take a small balsam and keep it in like, beaker of water containing iodine or saffron in. You will see that the same dye, the same color, colorful water, it has risen and the leaves become colored. So who is the only one which is in contact with that colorful water? That's the roots. So it's a simple example of root pressure. So root pressure can go on in day as well as night. So it is also observed at night, right? And early morning where evaporation is low and excess water. Yeah, you all know that plants ka excretion is through the margins. Whatever extra water the plants have, whatever the excess water the plants have, they excrete through the openings called as the hydatodes. Again, a very, very important word. What is that word? The hydatodes. So excess, they are just throwing it off through the hydatodes. Hydatodes are the margins, the openings. So through there, the correct. Okay, so such water loss is in a liquid phase. It is known as what? Guttation. You see the guttation in the early morning, like, dew drops on the grasses. Must have seen fresh grasses. You see the dew drops. So root pressure can be at best, only provide push to the water transport. Like it can give little bit of suction force, but they do not play a major role for the tall trees. So greatest contribution, because what will happen is that they help to maintain a chain of water molecules which can break under enormous tension created by transpiration. Transpiration creates enormous tension. So root pressure will help to give a continuous suction force to have a column of water, uninterrupted column of water. So root pressure does not account for the majority of water transport. Most plants meet their needs by transpiration pull. So root pressure, I call root pressure like a free home delivery. So like you order something through Swiggy or Zomato and it comes to your home. So like water comes to the leaves free of cost. Like without doing any efforts. The leaves did not have to do anything. It's like like active and passive. Like so this is like a passive thing. It's just going to happen. Like the roots only do all the efforts and send the water through the xylem to the leaves. The leaves don't have to do anything, right? So it's kind of like a passive kind of a thing. Yeah, exactly opposite. will be the transpiration pull. Now I'll just explain your transpiration pull. Yeah, so as I told you, the root pressure is only enough for what? It is only enough for the small size plants, right? It is only enough for the small size plants like the shrubs and the herbs. But for tall plants, like we need force called as what? Transpiration. So what is transpiration? Like basically it is like no pains, no gains. No pains, no gains. So transpiration is actually, what is the definition of transpiration? The loss of water in the form of water vapor. It is a loss of water in the form of the water vapor from the aerial parts of plants. So transpiration is what? Basically it's a loss of water. It is in the form of the water vapor, right? From which parts? From the aerial parts of the plants. Like there is transpiration, so they are losing water. Yeah, so basically what is happening is that the plants are not gaining water, they are losing water. So how it is good then? It's like it is called as Curtis. There was a scientist called Curtis. He called it as a necessary evil, or he called it as an unavoidable evil. It's like an evil thing, but you cannot avoid it. It's like studies. Studies are evil for us, they're bad for us, we are bored of it, but you cannot avoid them, you know that. So that is how the transpiration is. First, there is there is like a loss of water and then they gain water. So the loss itself helps to gain water. How it helps to gain water? So it's like, for the tall trees like coconut and all, the root pressure is not enough to supply the water, right, to the leaves. So first what happens due to the sunlight and all, there is a lot of transpiration. So what happens in transpiration? The leaves lose water, right? The tug-of pressure in the cells reduces. The water content of the cell reduces. They become thirsty. So just imagine, let me give you a very simple example. Imagine that you all have come from outside, it's summer season, and you all are playing out and you're thirsty, right? And somebody gives you a nice juice and a straw. What are you going to do? You're going to suck that juice through the straw, right? The mouth being the force. The force you'll apply through the mouth, through the lips, and you will suck that juice upwards, right? The same is the transpiration pull, isn't it? Same is the transpiration ka pull. Here we are pulling the water, right? Here, what happened first is that the leaves lost water. They became thirsty. There is lack of water there, right? And so they are going to pull the water upwards because water goes from higher to lower level, right? So now the lower level of water is there in the leaves, and the roots have got a higher level of water because roots have gained water. Fine. The roots have got water, but they are unable to send to the leaves because the leaves are like far, far away. So root says that we are not able to send by ourselves. But transpiration pull, like imagine it's like the same example of I told you, like you put a straw and you suck the juice. Same way, imagine every leaf is putting a straw and sucking the water upwards. That creates a suction force. And through the roots, the suction force helps to draw the water, with great speed through the xylem vessels, and then it is conducted in the upward direction, and finally it reaches the leaves. You know? So it is called as what? The transpiration pull. It's like a pull of transpiration. So as I told you, the root pressure can be easily demonstrated, right? The root pressure could be easily demonstrated, right? Cut stump of well-watered plant, and you can see the water is oozing out, and root pressure causes the mercury to rise, right? So when we cut the stem, the stem of a well-watered plant, the water comes out, it oozes out, and that causes the mercury to rise. So this is the proof of root pressure, that the root pressure does exist. Yeah, and what about the transpiration pull? So let's talk about the transpiration pull now. So did I not tell you that this is what's going to happen, right? The first the leaves are going to lose water. So initially, what happens is that they lose the water, right? And then there's a suction force, and that suction force, the water potential gradient is in the upward direction, right? So the roots, so water, is taken up from the soil. They reach the root hair and finally inside the roots, and through the xylem, it is carried, and adhesive and cohesive forces also help, right, to transport the water through the vessels up to the leaves. That's called as what, the transpiration pull. Another very important thing, is that in transpiration, yeah, there's something called as the capillarity pressure also acts, suction pressure, as well as the capillarity helps the water to reach the top. Okay, so as I told you, transpiration can be at a speed of about 15 meters per hour, right? So they can send water at a fast speed, like 15 meters per hour, right? So water is pushed, you know, it is pulled, right? So most researchers agree that water is mainly pulled through the plant. That is a driving force. And I told you that the cohesion, tension, transpiration, pull model is most important. Less than 1% of water reaching the leaves is used in photosynthesis and plant growth. Most of it is lost through the stomata as a part of transpiration. Okay, only less than 1% is useful. Less than only 1% is useful. Rest all is lost. 99% is lost as transpiration. How to prove transpiration? That we have done in the school, like cut a small, at a twig or a small branch. You try this plastic polythene bag and you keep it in hot sun. After a few hours, you remove the bag, you'll find water droplets. So they have come as a result of transpiration. Yeah, guys. So you know this diagram, everyone. This is the stomata. So there are the guard cells. There are two guard cells. The outer wall is thin, the inner wall is thick. You've studied that. This is the stomatal aperture, or called as a stoma. The stoma along with the two guard cells, and then there are the subsidiary cells close by. So what happens when the turgidity, during turgidity, what happens? The outer walls, right? So stomatas open and close, no? They open in day, they close at night. Why do they open? Because of the turgidity. So that's the reason, is because of the change in the turgidity of the guard cell. This happens. Inner wall, I told you, is thick and elastic. When turgidity increases, right, the walls bulge out and they form like a crescent shape. And it is also due to the myofibrils, it helps. And when the guard cells lose stock, or due to loss of water or stress, the guard cell becomes flaccid and the stomata closes. All right. So see, usually what happens, the lower surface, that is the dorsiventral surface, has got more number of stomata, right? In, yeah, the dorsiventral for the dicot, lower has more stomata, while isobilateral, monocots, they are both equal on both these surfaces for isobilateral in monocots. So transpiration is affected by several factors, like, come on guys, temperature. Higher the temperature, higher the rate of transpiration. So what is the connection between the temperature and transpiration? Directly proportional, dP. What about light? Tell me guys, would it be directly proportional or inversely proportional? Yeah, yeah, very good. Manshu, it is directly proportional, but up to a certain limit, huh? Excessive sunlight will destroy the stomata. So everything is directly proportional up to a certain limit or up to a certain level. Okay. All right. Then what about humidity? More the humidity, the rate of transpiration will increase or decrease. It will decrease. It will be inversely proportional. Humid weather hoga, so humidity is already there in the air, so transpiration rate will reduce. Wind speed, if more the wind speed, what will happen? The rate of transpiration will increase. Right? So there are a number of factors like distribution of stomata, how are the stomata distributed, percentage of open stomata, water status, canopy structure. So transpiration depends on several factors. Yes, very good. Yes, you are right. For wind speed, it will be directly proportional. Only remember for humidity, it will be inversely proportional. So the transpiration, which is transpiration driven, ascent of sap is because of two properties of water. I told you cohesion, mutual attraction between the water molecules themselves, right? And adhesion is what is surface like, attraction of the water towards the polar surfaces, like the trachea or tracheids. So one is the cohesion, the second one is the adhesion. Cohesion is like force of attraction among similar molecules. And adhesion is between the molecules and the surfaces through which they are transported. And surface tension is when water molecules are attracted to each other in liquid phase, right? So water molecules will be attracted to each other in the liquid phase more than in the gas phase. Guys, you have a physics make experiment and a surface tension and all is there in physics, right? If I'm not wrong, physics practicals. So these properties, give water high tensile strength, ability to, resist a pulling force, and water has got high capillarity. So that is why the water has ability to rise in thin tubes. So in plants, capillarity is aided by the small, diameter of trachea elements. Yes. Why it helps in more capillarity? Because uh, the diameter of the trachea, the tracheids and vessels is very thin. Because of that, it helps in better capillarity. Okay, so the process of photosynthesis, obviously, it requires water. The system of xylem vessels from root to the leaf can supply the needed water, but so as water evaporates through the stomata, thin film of water over the cells is continuous. As a result, pulling water molecule by molecule. So also because of lower concentration of water vapor in the atmosphere, so this creates a pull. ये जो pull create होता है, that is called as a transpiration pull. And transpiration is not less, like it is like hundreds of liters. Yeah, so pressure generated by transpiration can create pressure sufficient to lift a xylem sized column of water over 130 meters high. So it can, this transpiration rate is very high. So this is how, water comes and then passes through the cells, palisades, spongy, and then eventually through the substomatal chamber, if transpires out. So that creates a gradient between the outside air and the air spaces. Right. So now see the transpiration and photosynthesis is a compromise. So transpiration is basically like a compromise because so transpiration creates what first main function is for what transportation of water. So it creates a pull for absorption and transport of water. Supplies it mainly supplies water for photosynthesis. transports the minerals, from the soil, so transports sap. Cools, yes, the cooling effect, we forgot that. That's why, धूप में बड़े से पेड़ के नीचे, छाव में, you feel cool also. The cold air, that's why you feel a cool breeze when even on a hot sunny day, if you go through the like, let's say, areas like, the like national parks or something, like you feel cool, or you feel like gentle breeze. So that's because of transpiration, right? The cooling effect. So I call transpiration like the sweating, right? Sweating is the same like transpiration. Only thing is that, when we sweat, it's liquid sweat. When they sweat, that is water vapor. So it maintains, so yeah, so transpiration cools the leaf surfaces even 10 to 15 degrees. And it maintains the shape and structure of plants by keeping the cells turgid, right? Because see, transpiration should not be too much also. If too much transpiration is there, the leaves will start drooping down. So transpiration should also be there in a particular limit. Right? So an activity, photosynthesizing plant has an insatiable need for water. Means what? What is insatiable? Continuous. They need water for forever. So photosynthesis is limited by availability, water, which can be swiftly depleted by transpiration. Right? So photosynthesis requires water, but sometimes it gets less water because of transpiration. So humidity of the rainforest is largely due to the vast transpiration. That's why the tropical rainforest air is humid, because of more transpiration, and the tropics have high temperatures also. So evolution of C4 photosynthetic system is probably one of the strategies for maximizing the availability of CO2 while minimizing the water loss. I hope you know what is C4 pathway. Stomatas, C4 plants are twice as effective as C3 plants, right? Because they are fixing carbon dioxide more, like, making sugar. You all know C3, C4 CAM pathway, right? Prosylene acid metabolism. उसमें तो tomatoes open at night. It's like a xerophytic adaptation, right? So C4 plants is more effective in terms of, fixing carbon dioxide to make sugars, so they do more better photosynthesis. However, C4 plants loses only half as much water as C3 for the same amount of CO2 fixed. So C4 is an adaptation for water conservation. What comes next is the uptake and transportation of the water, like, and the minerals. So keeping that aside for the time being, let's focus on the MCQs. Okay, so there is a lot of about osmosis. So there are, like, different forms of osmosis, like endoosmosis. So swelling of resins. Even when marine fish are kept, in fresh water, they will die due to endoosmosis. They will burst. This is a very important MCQ. When marine saltwater fish are kept in fresh water, then they will die because of endoosmosis. Animal cell placed on the pure water will swell up and burst. Again, endoosmosis. Pollen grains germinate on stigma soon, but they will burst if they are kept in water or dilute sugar ka solution. Exosmosis is like what, outward flow. They are applied in shrinking of grapes, like, making wine and all. I told you about hypertonic, isotonic, and hypotonic. So what's the use of osmosis to the plants? For one is absorption of water, cell to cell movement, to provide rigidity and shape, right? For turgidity, it helps in opening and closing of stomatas, and also for movement of some parts, like some leaflets, some plants also move by osmosis. The raw pressure, I told you the pressure, like yes, the pressure it develops is the pressure responsible for pushing the membrane against the cell wall, termed as a tug-of pressure. So tug-of pressure comes from within and it goes on the cell wall, right? And wall pressure comes from the cell wall on the contents of cell. So tug-of pressure provides stability, keeps the cell turgid, helps in cell enlargement, because when turgidity is lost, it results into what? Wilting and all. Helps in opening and closing of stomata. Even turgor is a very important factor for this mimosa plant. छुई मुई बोलते हैं उसको, छुई मुई बोलते हैं, टच मी नॉट, छुई मुई, राजाड़ू. And it's due to the turgor pressure that radical and the seed germinates because of the pressure of turgor. I have told you wall pressure and turgor pressure like equal because they equal and opposite. The pressure exerted by the cell wall on the to counter the turgor pressure is called wall pressure. So what is plasmolysis? Plasmolysis is what when the water goes out, no? That is called as plasmolysis. उसका opposite क्या है? Deplasmolysis. It's like dehydration. The opposite of it is rehydration. है ना? Dehydration opposite is what? Rehydration. So similarly, okay. So what happens when a plasmolyzed protoplasm, when we keep it in a hypertonic solution, suddenly it gains water, and it again becomes filled with water, full of life. So what is the use of plasmolysis? वो तो सबको पता होगा, अचार, pickles. So osmotic potential can be only measured by plasmolysis, right? Salting of pickles, meat, fish, and all, because the microbes, why there is decay? Because we place them in hypertonic solution, no? So they have shrinkage of the cytoplasms and the microbes die out. So they get killed due to plasmolysis. So by salting, even weeds can be killed from tennis courts, and growth of plants can be prevented. Some plants, crack the walls of buildings and all that can be prevented. So plasmolysis is also helpful in determining whether a particular cell is, living or not, as plasmolysis does not occur in a non-living or a dead thing. Okay, and let's continue further. Wilting, to your know, none of plants fail to survive if it's like, so wilted. So wilting conditions we are aware of. Only water available to the plants is which one? The capillary water. Pata hai na? So it is only water available to the plants. So it is the water which is held around by the soil particles in the spaces due to surface tension and cohesion, right? So it is the only type of water which is available for the plants. Other waters like hygroscopic water, runaway water, gravitational water, they are too deep, so not available for the plants. Right. So this is the apoplast pathway. The apoplast, it occurs through the cell wall without crossing any cell membranes. Only cell walls are crossed. That is called apoplast. Ekdam simple. You can see here, this is the apoplast pathway. You can see here, they're only crossing the cell walls. The symplast is through the plasmodesmata, through the bridges. The center se jo ja raha hai na, like arrows, that is symplast. And this is the apoplast. It's all because of the Caspian strips, no, as I told. So ascent of sap, there are different theories like, root pressure and transpiration pull. Okay, guys. So we are through till this part. So now we have to practice the MCQs. All right, the MCQs we need to practice for this. Lot of things we have done today. A lot of parts till the transpiration pull we have covered. We have covered till the transpiration pull. Little bit is left. So we have to do MCQ practice and then the part further. Any questions, any queries, anything you want to ask me, please go ahead. Yes, I know it's a very simple chapter, but it needs to be done. So I hope you're studying well, study is going good. I will eventually give you a lot of material, MCQ material, question bank. So I'll help you out with a lot of things. Don't worry. Yes, so all fine. No queries, no doubts, no questions. Okay, so fine. Yes, understood. Very good. Okay, then thank you so much, guys, and take care. I'll see you on the other side, right, for the next lecture. Good night. Bye bye. See ya.
Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.